Welcome to First Things First. I'm Jenna Wolfe. That's the Hall of Famer, Cris Carter. This is Nick Wright. It is Hump Day, and we have got sports television to send your way. The Lakers-Clippers hallway series rivalry is better than ever. Ezekiel Elliott is giving the Cowboys yet another headache, and Kevin Durant will decide when Kevin Durant returns to the court. That's where we start this morning. So when the Nets acquired Kyrie Irving to play alongside KD this offseason, one tiny detail was getting in the way. When would KD actually see the court? The two-time Finals MVP is recovering from an Achilles tear that could sideline him for the entire season. And Nets GM Sean Marks is okay with that, saying, quote, "We're certainly not going to rush him back. It's going to be a Kevin Durant decision." See, what was your reaction to Mark's comments?
Well, they're doing everything. The coaching staff, they've talked about a couple of times as far as Kyrie. How would they look at Kyrie based on his past and everything? They talked about him having a clean slate. Sean is, and the rest of the organization, they're trying to make sure these guys are very, very comfortable. And, of course, it should be Kevin Durant's decision after a number of other things. And I think one of the key components to Kevin Durant even deciding that he was going to continue playing basketball in Brooklyn with as far as his career was their team doctor. He's very comfortable with his team doctor. He performed a surgery on him earlier, a procedure on his foot when he had a Jones fracture. And now when he ruptures his Achilles, the same doctor, his personal doctor, is the team doctor. So he'll be released as far as for physical therapy. He'll be released for on-the-court activity by his own personal doctor. Also, the doctor's traveling around with the team, so it's not as if you're on the road with the team, you have to fly somewhere else, California, go to Dr. Andrews in Birmingham or something to be able to get a checkup. No, he's able to check on you and to monitor your progress as far as you're working out with the trainers, working out there with the coaching staff, and ultimately, KD, do you feel comfortable? And when he feels comfortable, because the Nets are very, very fortunate in this situation. They saw the finals. They saw Kevin Durant push himself out there. And now, of course, everyone would have been like, no, I wouldn't have had him out there. Kevin Durant didn't have the right information. If he had had the right information, he might have had a different result. In doing that, the Nets are approaching this a lot smarter. I believe they're going about it the right way. And it should be up to KD when he wants to step on the court based on, the decision that he made trying to play in the finals with the Warriors.
Well, and I'm glad you brought up the Jones fracture, because back in the 2014-15 season, he has that Jones fracture. He misses the first 17 games of the year, and then he comes back. Maybe came back early because 27 games played later, he has to have another procedure on the foot, and he misses the rest of that season. The only playoff run in his career he's missed the entirety of. Why? Because that foot did not fully heal. Kevin Durant is not an old man in NBA terms. I know we talk about Kevin Durant. The next time he takes the court, he's probably going to be 32 if he misses all of this season. But in today's NBA, with Kevin Durant he's 12 years in, with having the miles logged on his body, he expects to play another 5 to 7 seasons. The idea that he would jeopardize the back end of his career, jeopardize potential future MVP seasons, potential future championships to try to come back 30 or 60 days early, to me is unrealistic. The quickest we've ever seen an NBA player come back from this injury is 8 months. That would put him back February 10th. The more typical recovery is 9 to 10 months. That obviously would put it into March and then April. If he's not back with a month left in the regular season, then he's not going to play this year. So he would need to be back by before April, or else because they're not going to have him play 5 regular season games and then go into the playoffs. And if they're not in the playoff picture, this won't be a discussion. But I don't think anyone thinks the Nets, even if the Kyrie thing doesn't go great, that they won't be in the playoff picture in the Eastern Conference.
I wouldn't close the door on him playing, especially even if the team is going to the playoffs. Like Paul George, does he play a handful of games, 5 to 8 games before they go into the playoffs, and test how it is? I just wouldn't close the door on him. Modern day medicine, everyone I've talked to, guys are recovering quicker. We don't see a lot of these Achilles injuries, so it's really hard to determine, oh man, do I say, oh, he's like Dominique Wilkins was, 20 years ago? Or do I say Chauncey Billups a number of years ago, Rudy Gay? Every guy is different. The technology as far as Achilles and rupturing your Achilles is at an all-time high. So Kevin Durant, he will be ready. He will be cleared to do all physical contact, everything within 6 months. And after that 6 months, it determines the pain threshold, how's the recovery gone, and how does he feel on the basketball court.
Don't you think Kevin Durant maybe, I don't know, a little gun shy to rush back or even to come back when he's given the all clear, since the last time he was given the all clear, even though we all assumed it was because the Warriors needed him sooner than perhaps he was ready to go, that he's a little worried about rushing himself back too soon because he just went through this injury after coming back a little too soon from an injury?
Well, I do not think he is going to rush back. And that's the word I keep keying on when we have this discussion. I do not think there is any scenario where Kevin Durant is going to play in an NBA game until he feels as confident as you can possibly feel.
So you don't think he felt confident
Achilles.
coming back for the Warriors?
I think these are two different
totally
situations.
different situation.
Yeah, I mean, he was, with the Warriors, he was dealing with a calf strain, a calf tear that could turn into a major injury. This is the major injury, and he's already suffered that one. To me, they're not comparative situations. And there was an expiration date on the NBA Finals. The earliest you would see him is the first week of February. The latest you'd see him is the first week of the following season. The question is, in that window between those dates, from basically February 10th to April 10th, can he get on the court before then? Because I think we both agree they're not going to have the first game he plays be in the NBA playoffs. So can he be back with 20 games, 15, 10 games left in next year's regular season?
One thing I do know, great athletes don't think like normal people. So conventional wisdom might be, I might rush myself back a number of years ago. But Kevin Durant is trying to come back and trying to say I'm the best basketball player in the world. I don't know anyone who's a high achiever in anything, and they don't rush any process. So I think the word rush is used the wrong way. If I'm rehabbing, I'm rushing that rehab so I can get back, regardless if I'm playing in a championship game or not. That's what makes athletes so special. Kevin Durant is going to, forget rush, push himself. All right? Jenna, you're a runner. You still work out. Your body's in pain. What do? You push yourself through. So us sitting back here saying, you think he's going to be a little gun shy, huh? Then we don't know athletes. We don't think like athletes think. And I'm not the athlete I used to, but I do know the mentality. And that does not die. Kevin Durant wants to be recognized as the best basketball player in the world. Kevin Durant still wants some respect for his game. That was part of the thing there in Golden State. This is Steph's team. People still don't respect my game, even after I beat LeBron 2 times in a row. So, yes, he is going to push himself. Rush, I don't think we should use that word because all athletes are pushed themselves to try to get back in the competition.
All right, moving on.
Dignity.
It took one offseason for NBA star power to flood Los Angeles. Anthony Davis joined LeBron and the Lakers. That's starry. But just down the hall, the Clippers got the reigning Finals MVP Kawhi Leonard to play alongside Paul George, also starry. And just like that, the Lakers-Clippers rivalry was renewed. AD can't help but agree, saying, quote, "It's going to be exciting, 2 juggernauts going at it. We'll see who comes out on top." Nick, which duo will have more success, LeBron and AD or Kawhi and Paul George?
In the short term, I think the better duo is clearly the one with the Lakers. I think they've got the best player of the 4 and obviously the best big man of the 4. I think Paul George is the odd man out when you're ranking these 3 players.
So you're just saying, obviously, forget what your last season you said. Whoever during the regular season, we're going to determine the best player in the world. All right? Once we get into the playoffs, it will be up. Giannis, all those others.
Yep.
Well, he wasn't in the playoffs, so What happened with that? Because
Kawhi,
you just breezed over that. The Lakers got the best play. Oh, wait.
Kawhi has earned the title, and I think that a lot of people consider him now the best player in basketball. He's earned that title. LeBron ceded that title by missing the playoffs and then seeing Kawhi or Giannis was eligible as well going on that run. That is that is a truism. What also is true is this. Right now, as we sit here today in the middle of July 2019, do I believe Kawhi Leonard's a better basketball player than LeBron? I don't.
That's fine.
He can. Sometimes
you had to change the rules.
I'm not changing the rules. Sometimes the heavyweight champion of the world is not also the best boxer in the world, but he has the belt, so he gets the title. But regardless, even if you have what I was about to say is even if you think Kawhi is slightly better than LeBron. The odd man out with respect in this whole situation is Paul George. Paul George is the guy that is not one of those clear-cut 7 best players in the league. So in the short term, to me, there are actually less health questions with the Lakers duo than the Clippers duo. They have they have a more powerful twosome up top. Now, rest of the roster, coaching staff, those are questions. But right now, the team that I think is best positioned for this year and the next year is the one with the Lakers. The one that's best positioned for the next 6 to 8 years is the one that doesn't have a 34-year-old, soon-to-be 35-year-old on it. That's the Clippers.
Well, I don't think the duo, you're going to be able to separate. We can go through the NBA. There's like 8 duos, 6 really, really strong.
Yep.
And you can go like, oh, I like this guy, I like this guy. But to me, it's not about the duos anymore. I know we don't have the super teams. It's about the other guys around it.
Supporting
you went over Doc Rivers briefly. Doc Rivers' ability to make those backup players play the role that he wants them to play, I believe is more significant. So to me, it's not about Anthony Davis. It's not about LeBron. It's about those other role players. It's about what role will they play? Will they accept that role? Boogie Cousins, does he have to come off the bench? I know all the Clippers players, if they want to come off the bench, they've done it before. They got their bench mob and everything. So what's going to be the buy-in to the duos that make these things go? Because as we've seen in the playoffs, you need more than 2 good players. So for me right now, the Clippers, I believe what they have is more dependable. I believe it's sustainable because the roles that they play, you know something? We got 3 of the best defenders. You know something? That's going to work every night. Compared to, I got to come up with a system. These 2 guys shouldn't be starters. Rondo shouldn't be a starter. Should Boogie Cousins be a starter? Those are things that have to be worked out. The Clippers are ready to go right now with Kawhi and with Paul George and the type of guys. Patrick Beverley as the point guard, Kawhi and Paul George. To me, there is no other team that can put the type of defense that the Clippers can put on you night in, night out, which I think is going to be dependable. But I believe those role players play more of a role than we're trying to give them credit, us going over all these duos.
The Lakers and Clippers have a similarity just inverse with each other, and that is we know the Clippers are going to have a great defense, should be the best defense in the NBA, certainly the best in the Western Conference. If they have a top 5 offense to go along with it, they'll win the title, assuming health. The Lakers, I feel like we know, will have a great offense with LeBron and Anthony Davis. If they have a top 5 defense, they'll win the title. If they have a top 10 defense, they'll be right there. The questions for the Clippers that I think are not being, because people have talked about the Lakers lineup, coaching, and defense. The question to me with the Clippers is, you've got Kawhi and Paul George and Lou Williams coming off the bench. Do you have anyone else on that team that is an above-average offensive player? Because Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's gone. Danilo Gallinari's gone. They traded away Tobias Harris mid-season. Those were all moves they had to make to get this duo that we're talking about. But as strong as they are defensively, they only have 3 players on the roster that I think we know are even above average offensive players.
What's more likely, that the Clippers are going to be in the top 5 offensively, or that the Lakers are going to be in the top 5 defensively? It seems like it's hard to imagine the Clippers playing that well offensively. It's that much harder to imagine the Lakers suddenly turning it on and playing that well defensively.
Well, the Clippers didn't have no problem playing offense. I mean, look at who they had on the team. Like, Now they got Paul George and Kawhi. They won 48 games with the same roster they had. Now we're adding 2 All-Stars. I think they're going to be able to score the basketball pretty good. How much offense do you need in the NBA? Like, you need 3 primary scorers, right? So, yes, I can understand that someone's going to have to fit that 3rd, 4th scorer. But from a teamwork standpoint, if you look at Doc Rivers' teams, how do they play? This roster should be one of the better teams that he's had, going back to his Boston days, even better than when they had the big 3 with the Clippers with Chris Paul and Blake. And
for the Clippers, their role players know their roles. Where their roster turnover came at the top of the roster in the rookie Shea. It was Tobias. They won 48 games. I know Tobias wasn't there for the whole thing, but he was there up until the trade deadline. And then Gallinari, who was points per game, I think their leading scorer the last year aside from Tobias Harris. For the Lakers are a totally different team. So I don't know that we can use what they were good at or bad at last year as any indication of next year. They weren't a great defensive team last year, but they've got, from last year's team, is LeBron's still there. I know Rondo and KCP and Kuzma are still there, but except for Kuzma, in very different roles. They were playing Ingram. They were playing different guys. LeBron missed 27 games. And most importantly, defensively, they didn't have Anthony Davis last year, who was going to fix a lot of mistakes guys make on the perimeter defensively. There's not a lot of history we can rely on what the Lakers will look like on either side of the ball because it's such a different team.
Stories to start your morning. Rob Gronkowski is currently enjoying retirement, but for how long? A recent report says there's a 40% chance Gronk returns to play football this season. CC, among the million other questions I would have, this one the most important. How much better would Gronk make the Patriots at this point?
I mean, which Gronk? You talking about Gronk less 40 pounds? Man, let's stop playing, man. Gronk's going to get himself hurt. In the best physical shape that he's been in. Last year he did the TB12 method, still got hurt. So I'm not lifting weights. So what is he doing to get ready for an NFL season? Man, stop. Report, 40%. When I retired, there was a 0% chance that I wasn't going to play. I end up coming back playing too, and it wasn't good, Gronk. Don't do it, man.
See, 50 days until the start of the season, as of today. If he decided today, when we got off the air, I'm coming back.
No.
Nope. He don't have enough time even in that window.
No, he can't put the muscle mass on there. No, you can't just all of a sudden, I'm just going to wake up and be an NFL player. The mentality, but the muscle mass for the overall endurance. He is not the best tight end blocking on the line of scrimmage when you take off 30, 40 pounds of bulk. I wonder how he lost all that weight, too.
Coffee and cigarettes.
Yeah, right.
It's the word around town. Moving on to Tiger Woods now. The 43-year-old is still recovering from his Masters performance back in April, saying the win took a lot out of me. See, is Tiger in good shape heading into the British Open tomorrow?
No. He hadn't played enough matches. His nerves hadn't been tested enough this year. No, I know Tiger, he's trying to concentrate on the majors. But golf, man, is about repetition. It's about getting out there, playing, testing yourself, testing your short game. No, there's too many good players on tour now for Tiger to be successful with an abbreviated schedule.
And I appreciate his honesty on this. We heard some of this after the U.S. Open saying, man, after the Masters, it wasn't just he was celebrating. He was out of what his regular regiment would have been because he was so happy and relieved he had won a major. Now, I obviously am hoping he can compete and play well tomorrow and Friday going into the weekend, but Tiger seems to have lowered the expectations for himself for this particular British Open.
All right, moving on to basketball. Kyrie Irving had a messy breakup with the Boston Celtics, but his new Nets general manager, Sean Marks, isn't worried. Says Kyrie will have a clean slate in Brooklyn. Nick, how do you expect Kyrie to transition from Boston to Brooklyn?
Well, listen, for Kyrie, there's an element of this is going to be your last shot. Now, not as if he'd be out of the league, but doesn't work in Cleveland. And maybe it's other people. Maybe it's nobody likes playing with LeBron. Doesn't work in Boston. Sure seems like it was Kyrie, but maybe Brad Stevens lost the handle of it. The young players were too immature. He picked Brooklyn. He and KD decided they wanted to come together. He picked the entire infrastructure, and that's a team that was on the ascent last year with D'Angelo Russell. If it doesn't work while they're waiting on KD to get back, all the fingers will be pointed at Kyrie. So it is on him to learn from his mistakes these last few years and be the same level player, but be a better locker room guy, a better basketball person than he had been.
This is something that I have come to know. There's no such thing as a clean slate. Last year, Josh Gordon, when he went to New England, you think he had a clean slate when he started? No, people tell you that. That's why when you start dating people, that's why you don't tell them the truth at the beginning. You know the reason why? Ain't nobody getting ready to give you no clean slate. Oh, you know something? I used to do this, but now I don't do that no more. First time you do something a little shady, they going to bring it up. Ain't no clean slate, but Kyrie Irving is going to get an opportunity. I don't think it's his last chance. We're still talking about Chris Paul playing in the league. Man, this is a league where he will find another spot. Someone else will think, oh, you know something? He can lead our team. But he's in the best spot that I think since, for Boston, him going back to the Nets was the best thing for him.
So the dating advice is not to
The dating advice from
give
Chris
it all
Carter
out.
last month has been exemplary. Just extraordinary.
Does that mean good?
That's
yes.
good.
Okay.
That's
Just
real
wonderful.
Good. Ending with the Houston Rockets. Now, there's no doubt that Russell Westbrook and James Harden will sell tickets. There is some doubt about how the two will share the ball. Head coach Mike D'Antoni isn't worried. He says the two stars will, quote, make it work, and that there will be tweaks but no major changes to the offense. Nick, how realistic is that? Can the Rockets contend without making any major style adjustments?
Listen, this is the team that has pushed Golden State, the healthy Golden State, the furthest. In fact, the only team that's pushed a healthy Golden State the last few years is the Rockets with their style. Now, there will be a minor stylistic adjustment accounting for you have the best raw athlete this team's ever had, replacing a guy who was on the very downside athletically, and the worst shooting guard this team's ever put out there. So in that regard, when it comes to Russ, they will tweak the style. They will do, I would imagine, more spread pick and roll for him. He won't be spot-up shooting. But I do not believe that this style can't win a title. I think that's too results-oriented. We saw what the position they were in 2 years ago, the last time they were fully healthy on Golden State, and then even when they weren't healthy, up a dozen points in the second half of a Game 7, which if they win that game, they are enormous favorites over LeBron James and company, that ragtag group he had in Cleveland that year. So I do think the style can win a championship. Will it? Can these two coexist? Those are separate questions. I do think they can coexist. Are they the favorites in the West, like people in Houston think they are? I don't think that's the case.
Next time we do this subject, I don't want to do the can the Rockets compete. I want to, because what you said as far as style, I like that. This style can win a championship. But can this style with that coach win a championship? Because for me, I get concerned. I listen to the mic'd up sessions with the Rockets, and every time I look for him to say something and to enlighten me about basketball, all he says is, we need to get a stop. We need to play with some pace. We need to get a stop. That's all the coach ever says. And I'm not surprised when they say, well, are you going to tweak the system? No. That's all he knows. He don't teach no other different basketball. They don't have an emphasis on the defensive side, and that's been one of the marks as far as his career. Why doesn't he have any variation to his offense? Any smart coach, at some point, you've been like, you know something? People have kind of figured this offense out in the playoffs. Why wouldn't I come up with a new wrinkle? To me, that's all part of coaching. That's all part of growing. So he's not going to change the system. A lot of the things that Chris Paul, you might not like Chris Paul, but what Chris Paul said is true. Their offense starts getting bogged down when one guy is constantly dribbling the basketball. That was one of the problems Chris Paul had. Now, yeah, I know we shipped Chris Paul off to OKC, but let's listen to some of the complaints he had. Those complaints were real.
Don't you think, though, Mike D'Antoni has adjusted greatly from what they were running in Phoenix, 7 seconds or less, where you're running up and down the court, to a slow, most isolation-heavy offense we've ever seen?
Well, because the three-point line changed things.
Right.
So the analytics changed things. But since he's been in Houston, what has he changed? Last year, he went more isolation. That was the only change that he's made. I'm just basing it on what I've seen.
So you mean, okay, so you're not talking about D'Antoni's entire arc. You mean in Houston, what they've been running, they've just been doubling down on the same system. I understand what you're saying. I think bringing Russ in is going to force the adjustment.
Yeah.
I mean, and here's the, go ahead.
It's not going to force the coach that says, I'm not going to adjust. He's going to put Russ into his system because he doesn't have any other system to put Russ into. Does that make sense?
No, I understand, but they're not going to ask Russ to do the same things they're asking Chris Paul to do. If they do, it'll fail. Like now, maybe I'm giving too much, assigning too much faith to the fact that the Rockets, very smart organization, I think a smart coaching staff, knows what we know, which is Chris Paul and Russell Westbrook, no matter where you think they are ranking-wise, very different players at this point in their careers. Like, here's how you best use Russ. And a way they.
What was the best way to use Chris Paul? They did not use him the best way to use Chris Paul.
I see, and I don't know that I agree with you.
Well, go ahead, tell me.
Because I think Chris Paul, at this point in his career, he can't break people down off the dribble. He can't blow past you. And so if the best way to use Chris Paul is to have the ball in his hands, well, James Harden's better at that. James Harden, why would I take it out of James Harden's
So Chris
hands?
Paul's off the ball. What do you do with them?
What they did with him last year, they had a...
Right. They don't have any movement. Mm-hmm. They spot up in one. Two guys in the opposite corner, center on the pick and roll, one guy opposite diagonal.
Yeah.
So regardless of what you think, they didn't have a plan for Chris Paul. That's what I'm trying to tell you. It's going to be hard for D'Antoni to come up with a plan for Russ when they didn't have a plan for Chris Paul.
And I guess I didn't realize we disagreed on this. I think they did have a plan with Chris Paul, and I think it was a great plan. I think it failed in Game 6 of the NBA playoffs. The first year with Chris Paul, they had the second best offense in the history of basketball and won 65 games. Last year, after the start, after the first 30 games of the season or 35 games of the season, they had the best record in the NBA along with a top 5 defense. Now, you will have to have a different plan with Russell Westbrook. With Russell Westbrook, you're going to have to do a spread pick and roll. You're going to have to do something they couldn't do with him in OKC very often, which is have 3 shooters around him and a big man and let him go pick and roll. Like, those are the things they'll do. I would think they will do differently with Russ. But the idea that the Rockets, because they failed in the last 5 quarters of the season, didn't have a plan with Chris Paul. First year, they had a plan with Chris Paul, and then Chris Paul got hurt. Last year, they fell apart once Kevin Durant went down oddly. But I don't think it's because they didn't have a plan of attack. They just weren't able to execute.
Yeah, they had a plan for Chris Paul. They turned a guy who was an all-star into a role player. And the role they tried to give him, he wasn't happy with that role. He wanted to play more with the second unit. He said that. That was part of the problem. So there was a plan. Chris Paul had a plan. They wouldn't allow Chris Paul to operate with the second unit. So for me, it just boils down to this. I got a lot of faith more in the general manager and getting good players than I have in the coach. Now, just because the general manager is smart, that don't mean the coach is very smart. I don't believe the coach can win a championship, and I believe the coach has hurt them in those situations where he has not made those adjustments. We've criticized the players, but in that Game 5, what did the coach do? What did he do in Game 6? What did he do in Game 7? Nothing. What did he do come back the next year? Nothing. And we need to recognize that and let people know that the coach is not great as far as X's and O's. If they have better talent, they will win. But if it comes down to an X's and O's match, I don't care who's on the other side. Their guy is not giving them the advantage that you need to when you start getting into these conference finals and championship series.
All right, let's turn to some football now. Talk some Dallas Cowboys and their looming contract extensions. Ezekiel Elliott still has 2 years left on his rookie deal, and so many believe Dallas would focus on locking up Dak Prescott and Amari Cooper first. But Zeke's got other ideas. According to reports, the Cowboys' all-pro running back is planning on holding out, and contract talks could go sideways if progress isn't made on a new deal. See, do you think Zeke should hold out?
No, I don't think Zeke should hold out. I do think it's important that he gets a new contract. And the reason why I don't think he should hold out, because I don't think Dallas will operate in good faith, and he jeopardized his overall health. I would go to training camp. I would let my teammates know I'm not going to play in any of the games. I'm going to be out here at practice, full participant. I'm getting ready for the season, believing that the Dallas Cowboys are going to operate in good faith moving forward to get me this contract extension. Also, the reason why I believe he should get the contract extension, because they getting ready to pass out a bunch of money that if I get nicked or something, will that money be there for me in a year or a year and a half? So now is the time. He's the best player on the Cowboys team. His value to the franchise, he is invaluable. Now, just because in the last couple of years that he's had some mishaps off, that to me would, if I'm his agent, I'm pressing the issue even more. I don't want to go through another offseason without these guaranteed money. So if I'm Zeke, I'm going to training camp, but I let the team know I'm not participating in any games. And if I don't have a contract by the 4th preseason game, I will not be there the first week of the season. And that right there will get the team's attention. But I believe he will be more successful in going to camp compared to sitting at home, potentially gaining weight, not being in sync with his teammates, because his teammates will respect this approach more so than just a holdout, especially with 2 years left on the deal.
I think that approach actually is the exact right one, which is make it clear to the team, I'm going to show up. I'm going to be a good soldier as long as you guys operate in good faith. And we over these next, if you say if I don't have a new contract by training camp, now you only got a couple weeks. But if you say I'm going to give you, we got 50 days till the start of the season, 7+ weeks to get this done. But understand, if you don't get it done, I am not going to be there for the regular season. I think that might be the best way to thread the needle, because I think this is a wildly important year for the Dallas Cowboys because they're about to hand out all that money. I happen to think they're the best team in the division. I think that this year they legitimately could. I think they have the best chance this season to return to the Super Bowl that they've had in 25 years. I really believe that. I do not think that will be the case the next few years because this team's about to get a hell of a lot less talented. They got $19 million in cap space. They're going to give Dak at least a $25 million raise,
right.
Amari a raise, Zeke a raise, Byron Jones a raise. They will come back in 2020 without that same offensive line, without that same defense, because these guys are getting paid. So the critical nature of this entire season, the beginning of this season, getting off to a good start, not having what happened in '93 where Emmett held out 2 games and they went 0-2. Now they rallied. That team was so talented. They went 15-2 the rest of the way and won the Super Bowl. But they have to have Zeke the entire year to have a chance to reach their potential. And to me, this is the best chance they're going to have with this iteration of talent to actually reach that full potential that they wasted in year 1.
We have talked about this all week. We talked about the fact that Dak Prescott is the quarterback of this team, and you got to pay your quarterback. We talked about the fact that Amari came in for a first-round pick. You got to pay Amari. You're not going to let him go. And now we're talking about the fact that you got to get it done with Ezekiel Elliott, hopefully within the next 50 days. Do the Dallas Cowboys have enough money under the cap to be able to pay all those, keep all 3 of them happy? Forget everybody else. If those are the 3 top priorities, can they pay those top 3 the way they want to get paid before the season starts?
They got to be very creative. I mean, there is not enough space to be able to give them the appropriate signing bonuses. The way it's played out over 4 or 5 years, it's a tough call. And I could see 2 of the 3 deals getting done and someone being left out. But, man, I always go back to Dennis Green. What does he say? Every man's in business for himself. Now, I encourage you, Nick, to get as much money, Jenna as much money. But when it comes down to Cris, I ain't thinking about y'all. It ain't got nothing to do with y'all. It's about me, what's my worth to the organization, and I'm getting ready to get as much of it as I can get. And you can't be concerned about what the quarterback's getting. I don't care. Well, what about the wide receiver? I do not care. Zeke has to take it upon himself. That's why he's got to let the organization know, all right, I'll be here for camp, but I will not be here when we start the season. So you go ahead and give Amari an extension. You go ahead and give Dak an extension. I wouldn't be sitting around talking like Dak, oh, yeah, all of us need to be the. No. I would be talking about my money. You work out your own money, you and your agent and organization. But my concern is me and my well-being.
Jenna, to answer your question, you can always in the NFL structure a contract to where for this year you're fine. They could pay all of them. They could make all 3 today, the highest paid in the league at their position.
Well, what would that mean?
It would mean that you're borrowing from future you for today you. That's why I'm talking about the importance of this season. We know the talent on this roster. They bring back almost everyone of consequence from last year. They add talent, Randall Cobb, Robert Quinn. This team can be really, really good, but if they're going to pay these guys, those offensive linemen, we talk about being 3 All-Pros, one of them won't be there the following season. And then one of those defensive players that we think can be an All-Pro won't be there the year after. So that's where Zeke oddly has a bit of leverage here. The organization knows how critical this year is, your last year with Dak under the rookie contract, to winning with this much talent. So they can pay them all. They will pay for that in the next few seasons.
Back here, first things first, we're joined by FS1 NBA analyst Cris Broussard. Cris was admiring our old people pictures. Did you do that yet?
Yes, I didn't like the way I looked old.
So you just forgot
but
that.
But your radio partner, Rob Parker.
I thought Rob Parker looked better.
He's got something to look forward to.
He looked better. The contrast between the skin color and the gray hair looked really good.
It does?
Yeah, I don't think you had to do that with some type of app, though. I've been knowing him for like 20 years. He's been moving up. When we start dressing him at Fox, we start that Detroit now.
They
Give him a hot shower and some
clothes. They had him in new suits within 3 days.
Man,
Rob.
We don't provide this but for you.
I love you, Rob Parker.
Very much.
That's
love you.
mean, man.
Detroit, man.
Let's get to it. You can't talk about the best teams in the East and not bring up the 76ers. Joel Embiid is developing into one of the best big men in the game, and they locked up Ben Simmons on a max deal, but Charles Barkley has some pretty blunt advice for the two Philly All-Stars, saying, quote, Embiid has got to get his fat butt in shape, and Ben Simmons has got to get to work on his game. All right, Broussard, who do you think needs more work for the team's long-term success? Embiid and his glutes or Ben Simmons and his game?
Look, I think, unfortunately, there's reason to believe neither guy will really develop to the degree that they need to, okay? But if one doesn't, like, I have to pick Joel Embiid in this situation because I think you're talking about health versus just development as a player. Embiid, to me, like Barkley was right. I think Joel's knee problems last year in the playoffs, I think that's related to being overweight. So you get yourself in shape, I think you're better physically. His stomach issues, I think, could be related to diet. So if he's got a nutritionist and gets himself in shape, I think he'll be fine. And I think if he's playing, he gives you something unique. That's it. Like, there's no other big man like him in the league now. And that's valuable. Ben Simmons, if he doesn't develop, I still can trade him. And I think that's what, look, you need him to develop. But if he doesn't, I think you can move him. And Ben, look, I've been a fan of his since LSU, but I have to admit this. He has not really shown that he's going to win at a high level, that he really impacts your winning. At LSU, they don't even make the NCAA tournament. Here in Philadelphia, when they beat Toronto in 2 of those games, they were up 2-1, he scored 6 points in the first win, 10 points in the second. So I think Joel Embiid, because he is unique, and he's not just a big man on the block. We know that. He can step out, he can face up. He will probably get even better shooting threes to the point where he's really serviceable in that regard in a few years, and he can protect the rim. So he's so unique in today's NBA. I would say if I had to choose one, it'd be Embiid.
Well, and we've talked a lot about Simmons, so I want to focus on Embiid as well for a moment. Also because while Simmons has enormous potential and upside, we've seen Embiid's close to realized, and his upside is best player in the league. Embiid's is not only best player in the league, but a guy that because there aren't any other 7'2", 290-pound big men with that type of footwork, best player in the league, there's no good matchup for. And so there's the importance for the Sixers of Embiid getting his, I think it is nutrition, because I think there's a chicken and egg thing here. Because of the knee problems, and because of how big he is, he's never going to be able to be a guy that can do the cardio stuff necessary to cut a lot of weight, the way some guys might be able to. He's going to have to have it be a 365-day-a-year thing. And Zach Lowe pointed this out. I think it's a good point. Are you waiting for the Victor Oladipo body transformation in an offseason? The Giannis body transformation in an offseason where it's like Joel Embiid, 6 weeks before season starts, posts a picture to the gram of him looking rocked up and leaned down because he does seem to have problems with what he eats and his ability to keep his weight, prevent it from fluctuating. We know what Simmons' problem is. Can't shoot. Will he work on shooting? Will he put in the embarrassing work that Blake Griffin talked about of going in a gym by himself because his shot was so awkward and how he was already an NBA All-Star and had to rebuild his jump shot. Embiid's is a little more complex because it's about something he has to do at all times in season or off season in order to stay fully healthy and in order to stay at his right playing weight.
Charles Barkley said something else, too, which is an interesting point, which was, he said, when I came into the league, I got fat, I ballooned, and Moses Malone sat me down and said, dude, you're fat. Like, it's not going to happen for you. So you wonder who's going to sit these two guys down. Is it an Elton Brand? Is it a Brett Brown and say, you need to lose weight, you need to shoot better? Is he the coach or the general manager that's capable of even having that conversation? As a player, what's harder to hear? And where are you more likely, who's more likely to change given what advice you get?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. But also in that, even if there is a viable answer, Elton Brand as a general manager, former player, is he going to do it? Brett Brown, is he going to do it? I don't know who's going to do that, but I'm going to tell you when it works, Jenna, is when you decide that I'm going to do it. I don't need a coach, don't need an organization, and there's a couple different levels of maturity in an athlete when he's in his 20s. Joel Embiid, to me, I'm less concerned about because it's easier to do.
Right.
Diet, cardio. How many people do y'all know can't shoot and became a good to great shooter? Don't make a list because there's not a whole bunch of people on it.
Jason
all right?
Kidd,
There's not a whole bunch of people on it. Joel Embiid, we have seen players, immature, come in. They don't understand eating. They eat a lot of fast food. That's one of Joel Embiid's problems is selection. Even if he just stopped eating fast food, Joel Embiid never is going to be ripped up, Nick. He don't have the body type. He's too big. You're not going to be able to put in that type of hours to be able to cut that type through. I mean, he's a huge guy now. And we're not talking about a guy 6'7", 200 pounds. No, he's a huge man. Can he lose some weight? What's his exact fighting weight? I think that's very important. I think people cooking his food is very, very important. Ben Simmons now, I told y'all from the beginning, I haven't seen people that learned how to shoot a great deal. And he is going closer to the bucket. First year, oh, man, he's 78% inside of 10 feet. Last year, 89% inside of 10 feet. He's not comfortable shooting the basketball, and that comes with hundreds and hundreds of hours locked into the gym, embarrassment, because you're going to force yourself to be a better player.
The other thing, we talked about this yesterday with Simmons, his aggressiveness. It wanes. Some days he's really aggressive, other days he's passive. At 22 years old, your aggressiveness is not something I should be worrying about.
No, not in your motor.
Right? And the fact that's a problem, that worries me as well. To your point, Jenna, Moses Malone, Charles Barkley had no choice but to respect Moses Malone. Moses Malone had won a championship. He had already had a Hall of Fame career.
Won 3 MVPs.
Right. So now Al Horford is a real professional. He's respected around the league. He can say it. Elton Brand was a real professional, was respected around, very similar to Horford.
Yep.
He could say it, but they still don't have the stature that a Moses Malone had to where Embiid has to listen to it.
And if the way last season ended isn't motivating for these two guys, we saw Embiid crying. And Ben Simmons,
I thought that was a good sign,
me too. Because, listen, you lost in the most heartbreaking fashion, in part because neither of these guys had good Game 7s. You still lost by 2 to the team that went on to win the title. If that's not motivating for them to come back better, then nothing is going to be motivating, particularly for Simmons.
Back here with Chris Broussard, talking Houston Rockets. So selling tickets to see Westbrook and Harden, that's the easy parts in Houston. Who will handle the rock? That's the not as easy part in Houston, unless apparently your head coach, Mike D'Antoni, who said, quote, we're not changing much, we'll tweak it, but to say you've got to change and you can't win that way, that's BS. Broussard, can the Rockets contend without making any major style adjustments to this offense?
Look, let me say the part I agree with Mike D'Antoni on. To say his style of coaching or style of play can't win, I do agree. It is BS. I think 2 years ago, if Chris Paul doesn't get hurt, they could have won the championship. Okay, go back to Phoenix, 2007. Obviously, they had some great teams with Steve Nash, Stoudemire, those guys. 2007, when Amari Stoudemire and Boris Diaw got suspended in the second round, right, against San Antonio. San Antonio went on to win the championship. They were way better than Cleveland.
Yep.
Phoenix could have won that series and probably would have beaten Cleveland and won the NBA championship. So his style can win. However, to not change you're going to play the same way with Russell Westbrook just filling him in for Chris Paul, there is no way that can work. Their season's over before it started if they're not going to change. And I got to say, James Harden, he did not change his game one iota for Chris Paul. His usage rate actually went up every year.
Yeah, I would say he changed, but it changed.
The wrong way.
Yes.
The only reason it worked to some degree was because Chris could shoot. But Russ, no, they have got to make changes. If they don't, there's no way this is going to work.
Well, so obviously they are going to use Russ different than they use Chris Paul. Like if they don't, then what do they do? Then he said we're going to.
What he said.
He said we're going to make tweaks.
Let's just do the press conference again. What would you have said? Because obviously he doesn't win the press conference.
Well, I mean, he might not have won it for you guys. I think what he said makes perfect sense. What he said is this, essentially, and he not only did the press conference, he did a long-form podcast with Adrian Wojnarowski where he talked about this a lot, where he said, listen, we had one of the greatest offenses ever doing what we do 2 years ago. Last year, we had the best record in the NBA the second half of the season to go along with a top-5 defense. Obviously, 2 years ago, we can say it was Chris Paul's injury, but even with Chris Paul's injury, they had a double-digit second-half lead in Game 7 at home, and they couldn't close. Last year, once Kevin Durant went down, what D'Antoni said was, we went from the hunter to the hunted. It changed our mentality, whatever it was. Those last 5 quarters of the season for them were an abomination. But it is not an indictment to me on the style with which they play. You're right. They turned Chris Paul into a glorified role player because James Harden was having last year the greatest individual isolation season we've ever seen in NBA history and one of the best scoring seasons we've seen in modern NBA history. But how will they use Chris Paul? They'll do a spread pick and roll with 3 shooters on the court, something he was never able to do in OKC or very rarely.
Westbrook.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's when Harden's on the bench?
Or when Harden's one of the shooters.
Okay, that's a change.
Yes.
And I'd like to see Harden do that. Look.
Harden has to buy in. Harden can't assume it's going to be exactly what happened last year, just with a different guy playing the role of Chris Paul.
I just don't believe, even if Houston had won the championship, come back and make some adjustments. All right? I do not believe he does not have a system. Forget the offensive end. Even if he said, you know something, in the postseason, we got to put a little more emphasis on defense. I would have loved to hear that. He didn't say that. You know what else I'd love to hear? During the regular season, they don't practice a lot in Houston. They do a lot of walkthroughs. They probably do less practicing than any other team. You know something? I'm going to look at potentially tinkering with our regular season to see if we need to make some adjustments that might help us in the postseason. Even if I wasn't going to change, I would make people think that I was going to change, and I would be open. They got a new coaching staff. So we're getting ready to run the same system with all these different coaches that weren't here. I mean, to me, if you're going to get better, the way you get better is by doing things a little bit different. And they really do have to come up with a system for Russ. Any team that Russ is on, you need a system for Russ to be able to take advantage of what he does best. And what Houston and the system and the analytics, it doesn't lead to Russ playing as the most efficient game. Well, that's all. You need to help your players out.
One of the things that makes Greg Popovich arguably the best coach in NBA history is he adjusts to his players. When he had the Twin Towers, Robinson and Duncan, he played a certain way. Then he built around Duncan. They were defensive oriented. Yep. Then he went to Tony Parker as the focal point of the offense. When they won in 2014, they shot more threes than they usually do. Now they don't shoot as many threes. He adjusts to his personnel. And D'Antoni's not alone in this, But D'Antoni's weakness, he doesn't adjust at all. So when he went to New York and didn't have the personnel to play his style, they were horrible. When he went to LA and had really good players, but not the personnel to play his style, they were horrible. He has got to adjust to Westbrook. If they play the same way, with whatever little tweaks means, it's not going to have a chance.
Okay, so 2 points. One is he has totally changed his style with Houston than what he ran anywhere else. They are
Phoenix
slow.
was similar.
No, Phoenix was 7 seconds or less.
But ball-dominant point guard.
Yes.
Ball-dominant point guard doing everything.
Absolutely.
That's essentially the same thing. Nash, Harden.
Right, but running up and down the court in Phoenix as opposed to playing at a slow...
They ran for threes, though.
Right. Which team you were talking
Phoenix.
about? Phoenix, yes. They ran for threes. Houston, much slower pace, but he's doing what he did with Steve Nash, except on steroids. He's just going all in on, we think we have the best player on the court. We're going to leave the ball in his hands more than anyone. But I just want to ask you both this. Do you think they're going to, next year in Houston, they're going to ask Russ to do the things they asked Chris Paul to do, or do you think they're going to change?
I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know. That's my answer.
It would be crazy to ask Russell Westbrook to do what they asked Chris Paul to do. I think it's obvious to everyone. You've got one guy who is, at this point, even though he's a very good player in Chris Paul, a below-average athlete for his position, given his age, and the other guy who might be the best raw athlete in the league.
But this is the thing, Nick. Besides playing up and down, there is nothing you can do for a great athlete. You can't throw a bunch of lobs to Russ as a guard. Like, what else do you do?
You can spread the court and have him run a pick and roll where he can beat his man. That's what you can do.
Well,
something that they couldn't do with Chris Paul.
He's going to be great with the ball in his hands and the floor spread. There's no question about it. Like, if Hart...
But this is the problem. Harden is not great when he's off the ball.
Right.
Last year, he shot 70 catch and shoot threes. That's only 7%. He shot over 1,000.
Yep.
Nick, he shot 500 three-pointers where he had 7 dribbles. 1.
Right.
7 dribbling. 500.
Yep.
Shooting 500 threes is a big season for anyone. So it's not his style. Harden's going to have to change, which typically means the coach is going to have to talk to Harden to be able to force that change. That's all I'm saying.
And I don't know that Mike will do that because Mike is not confrontational with his players. And that's the thing. Look, if Harden is going to be off the ball and when Russ has it, that'll work.
Of course it'll work.
But last year when Harden was off the ball, he just stood around and watched.
And that was, because he was so rarely off the ball, that was his time to rest. He'll be off the ball more this time because Russ will have it more. And B, one of the reasons he shot only 70 catch-and-shoot threes was because no one could generate them. No one on that Rockets team.
Chris Paul could have.
He cannot beat his man off the dribble
He
anymore.
can generate open looks for his teammates.
I think that some of what we saw in the playoffs and the way they play defense, all right, Chris Paul can still beat his man off the dribble. All right, so he wasn't a problem as far as Harden not only getting 70 looks. It's the system that only generated 70 looks for Harden.
All right, I want D'Antoni to talk to Harden. I want Brett Brown to talk to Ben Simmons. I want everyone to sit down this offseason and have big tech. No. All right, let's talk some Rob Gronkowski. The all-pro tight end, much like my parents, basking in the glory of retirement. For now. But ever since Gronk hung up the spikes, rumors have been swirling about him coming back to football. And now we can put a number on it with a recent report saying there is a 40% chance Gronkowski comes out of retirement this season. Not 39 and not 41. It is a 40% chance. See, how much better would Gronk make the Patriots?
What Gronk are we getting? I mean, are we getting Gronk that he's going to be around 255, 260? Or are we getting some other type of
If
Gronk?
you got the Gronk from last year, if the player he was, which was not the player he once was, but the player that we last saw in the Super Bowl.
At that weight.
How much would that Gronk improve this team?
That dude is dead, man. That dude ain't coming back. Y'all can play all these games you want to. When you don't do the type of training for the NFL, you set yourself up, number one, to get hurt. And there's no way that he can achieve the success because a lot of it was built on his size, his power, and the overall attitude of how he's going to play football.
So I was just reading a little bit about what he's been doing. No more weights since last season. He's only using bands, which, as you know, is a lot of stretching. He took off all that muscle mass. There's no way with 50 days left to go that he's able, am I correct, to be able to put on the amount of mass he could use in his position.
No.
So blocking tight end.
When you're getting an update from Gronk's girlfriend, oh, yeah, he's doing these bands. Well, y'all let me know the boyfriend is doing band work that's getting ready for the NFL. So for me, I'm not going to say, after 16 years of getting ready to play in the NFL, and I think in 14 of those seasons, I think I played at least like 15 games. Yep. Like, you just don't wake up out of bed, I'm going to do some band work, and that's going to keep you healthy in the NFL. He can't make it through NFL practices. Last year, he tried the TB12 method. End up getting hurt. Gronk has gotten hurt when he's been in the best physical shape. How he does his job is physical. New England right now, they're about being a physical team. Him, Devlin, Sony Michel running the football with that offensive line. The offensive line is the best group besides their secondary, which I believe is the best in the league. Gronk can't play the style of football, so that 40% report and everything, that's a bunch of BS.
But this is the ultimate, with respect, do as I say, not as I do, because you know it's a bad idea, not only because of your experience covering the game, but because you attempted something similar and you mentioned 14 of your 16 seasons, you played the full season essentially. The 1 year you didn't, you broke your collarbone, right? When you missed 4 weeks.
Yep.
That was early. Then you went a dozen straight years playing the whole year. And then that final year, when you tried to come back, your body wasn't ready, and you got a lacerated spleen, and you ended up punched something terrible in the hospital. So even if it's a bad idea for Gronk to come back, I don't think we can close the door to him doing it. And even if we think he can't be ready in 50 days, the idea that he can't be ready by week 12, that he can't be ready by later, or at least think he's ready later in the season, we do see guys come back, whether it's...
Yeah, you might see him some other places, but you don't see him in the most predictable franchise in all sports. You don't see him with a team that's dominated pro football for the last 20 years. You might see that on the Raiders. You might see that on some ragtag outfit, Cleveland a couple years ago, but you don't see New England. Hey, Bill Belichick, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to stay at home and get ready while you guys go out there and go through the grind. Bill Belichick, remember last year we talked about them practicing in the cold, doing all those things that get a football player ready for what he's got to endure. Gronk hadn't done anything to get ready for the season. So y'all can talk about it.
So that's really interesting. So if we don't see Gronk on the gram for the next couple months, and over the next couple months he puts on some weight, not all the weight, but some of the weight back. And if at the end of September he calls up Bill Belichick and says, "Hey, after Thanksgiving, I think I'll be ready to play," you think Belichick would say, "We appreciate the interest, but no"? You think they wouldn't allow him?
I think Bill Belichick will surprise you by the questions that he would ask Gronk. Well, why now? Well, what is it now? Well, why do you want to play now? I just don't believe it's as simple as you put it. Football and professional football is hard, all right? This is something I'm not guessing about. This is something I know. Guys right now are breaking their back, trying to get in these last 2 weeks, trying to get that last little bit of conditioning so they can make it through the season. Maybe they might be able to put on 2 to 5 pounds if they have a hard time, because during the season, once you start the season, you're not trying to get weight gains. You're trying to maintain your overall strength throughout the season, and that's what the offseason, so you're getting ready to eliminate that. And even if I had come back and been successful, I wouldn't be foolish enough to think that professional football, oh, it's a part-time job. Oh, you can do whatever you want to. You don't have to lift no weights. No, I would be naive to stupid and lying to the general public. This is too hard to do. And I just wish we would give football players a little more credit for getting through the season than what Gronk is doing right now.
Stories to start your morning. So Ezekiel Elliott still has 2 years left on his rookie deal, but according to reports, Cowboys All-Pro running back is planning on holding out, and contract talks could go sideways if progress isn't made on a new deal. What do you think, Cris Carter? Should Zeke hold out?
If Zeke wants a new contract, he shouldn't hold out, but he should let the team know I'm coming to training camp, I'm going to participate, but if I don't get a contract or not comfortable where we are week number 1, I won't be on the field. And I believe that the Dallas Cowboys, that's a threat that they would take serious.
Do you think he could do that and make the arrangement with the coaching staff that he's not going to play in the preseason games? Obviously, you could right before each preseason game say, my hamstring. But do you think they could work out the agreement?
No, you're better off with an arrangement so the team can prepare, because that guy's second team, third team guy, they're going to be getting more reps. And I think if you come to the coaching staff, they'll respect that more than you being at home and them like,
what's happening? Training,
and you're not in communication with them on a daily basis.
All right, moving on to Tiger Woods now. The 43-year-old is still recovering from his Masters performance back in April, saying, quote, "The wind took a lot out of me." See, is Tiger in good shape heading into the Open Championship tomorrow?
I don't think so. Golf is a game about repetition. He hadn't played in enough tournaments. He's told us that his schedule will be abbreviated, but typically he gets more work. Now, the major tournaments, they've changed the schedule. So now he can't necessarily get those 2 or 3 tournaments that he would get in before playing in those summer majors. If he wants to be able to win more majors, which is his only goal, he's going to have to be able to figure out that schedule. But he hadn't been able to practice as much because there's some complications as far as his back since the Masters.
This puts me in a rough spot, Jenna. Jenna, who do I pick for every major?
Tiger Woods.
It doesn't even seem like Tiger's going to pick himself this week. And yet you're going to ask me tomorrow who I'm picking for the British. Listen, Tiger, if he never does anything after winning that Masters, it was still one of the greatest comeback stories in the history of golf. But he obviously believes and wants to win 3 more to officially pass Jack, or to officially tie Jack with 3 more, 4 more to pass him. It doesn't seem like he's that bullish on his prospects this weekend.
I used to work with a guy, Mike Greenberg. He's a huge Tiger fan. Mike Greenberg, he's smart, though. If Tiger was saying this, he'd pick somebody else.
Well, we have to wait for tomorrow. I haven't given
So the guy who thinks he's the smartest guy I ever worked with.
Oh, I love Greeny, but he ain't as smart as me. Come on, Northwestern, give me a break. Give me a break.
The NBA now. You can't talk about the best teams in the East without talking about the Sixers. But Charles Barkley has some pretty blunt advice for Joel Embiid and for Ben Simmons, saying, quote, "Embiid has got to get his fat butt in shape, and Ben Simmons has got to work on his game." Nick, whose development is more important to the team's long-term success? Would it be Embiid or Simmons?
For the process to be considered a success, they both have to develop. Now, Embiid, I would argue, is much further along in his development. We've seen Embiid play for stretches as an MVP candidate. Ben Simmons, we've seen for the entirety of his career, one glaring, gaping hole. Now, I think Simmons came into the league more well-rounded than Embiid. I think Simmons, his first game in the NBA was better than Embiid was his first game, but Simmons has stayed totally stagnant, and Embiid's grown his game. But it's very different things we're looking for, these two guys. There isn't a part of Joel Embiid's game, aside from we'd like him to be a little more consistent from 3, but he's 7'2", so that would just be a bonus, that you really are worried about. It's why during the conference semifinals was he seemingly a game-time decision every game. He got a stomach bug, and then you're worried about his body. Like, it's health, fitness, nutrition, overall wellness, and body weight. With Simmons, it's will he continue to be the least competent shooter in the entire NBA? So these are 2 very different things. For me, Joel Embiid's is, in theory, simple, but it is something athletes, non-athletes, just humans across the spectrum struggle with, which is how do I stay at my ideal body weight, even if it's a huge part of what I do for a living? For Ben Simmons, it's how do I take something that I've never been able to do that is incredibly critical, the only thing that matters to me, taking the next step in my career, and put in the work, and I think deal with the embarrassment of the work, which I think is a big part of this, to get to that next level. I'll say this, if the way they lost last year isn't motivating for each of them, then nothing will be. Embiid was crying. Ben Simmons, if he's better in that series, they beat Toronto. And maybe they think they're the champions, and the process is a resounding success. So for both these guys, there's plenty of motivation, and we'll see starting next season if it resonates for them.
They both have to know it's a problem. Ben Simmons has to acknowledge that my shooting is holding this team back. Joel Embiid has to acknowledge that if I don't get in better shape and stay healthy and lose some weight, I'm going to continue to miss games because of it. That's the first thing they have to do. And I think you said it really brilliantly before. People can talk to them up and down until they realize that they've got to improve as people, as humans, as athletes. They're never going to do it.
Yeah, the best ideas people have are the ones they come up with, or at least they think so. Because your kids, you ask them, you tell them something, like, oh, no. Then they come up with it and like, oh, yeah, they have the energy to be able to do it. So for me, if it's going to stick with you, it has to be personal. It has to be internal. And that's the part where I believe that Joel Embiid, it's a lot easier to gain control of your fitness, to get himself at the proper weight. And I like that Charles Barkley, what Charles said, because I know Charles's career. Charles got cut by the Olympic team by Bobby Knight. Why? Because he was overweight in his personality. And then eventually he talked about Moses Malone, but that was later in his career where Charles got the fitness part. You look at Charles Barkley on the Dream Team. You look at those videos and you look how fit he is, how much he can raise off the ground and everything. Man, that's what Zion will look like at his best. But Charles is on to it. The fitness is a huge component. It's a lot easier than developing a jump shot. But for me, Ben Simmons, we talk about his shooting or inability to shoot or reluctance to shoot away from 10 feet because he's getting closer. Year number 1, 78% from 10 feet. Last year, 89%, 10 feet or closer. But to me, the problem is bigger. And to me, it's an attitude problem because I wouldn't have a problem with Ben Simmons if he was just a bull in a china shop. I'm going to play bully ball. I'm just going to play aggressive like I did that time, the night I dropped 31 on Brooklyn.
Right after Jared
To me,
Dudley
it's an
talked that
attitude. He doesn't take the court and doesn't play like a guy that doesn't have a jump shot. Where I got to get to the paint. I'm going to use my size, force over everyone on a regular night. Play like Draymond Green. He don't play like that. He plays laid back and everything. So for me, that's the bigger problem than the jump shot because he can survive without a jump shot. He's an all-star. But can you continue, be on the court, be one of the best athletes, and not know that?
You said Draymond Green. How about this? What about play like early Derrick Rose? Derrick Rose, damn near a foot shorter than Ben Simmons, at least 8 inches shorter. And explosive athlete, but going 100 miles an hour at all times. He didn't have no jump shot. Now, he didn't shoot 0 threes, but he was not a reliable jump shooter. Won an MVP playing that way, and he was more explosive than Simmons, but Simmons can make up for that with length and height. Right now, Ben Simmons, when he came into the league, was the consensus #1 pick. And then he misses the year with the redshirt year with the injury. And then his rookie season, his stats are, as I like to say, damn near 1 of 1 in NBA history for rookies. And people such as myself said, wow, what is this guy going to be when he learns to shoot?
Didn't LeBron James call him like the baby king?
A young prince.
Young prince.
Like, listen, there was, and I don't know if this is what beget what here, but there are now all of a sudden a lot of questions about Simmons. His motor during the game. How much of the celebrity lifestyle does he indulge in, and how much is that more motivating than the actual game? And how much does he want to work on the things he's not good at? Because between his first and second year in the league, he didn't. Or at least there was no discernible evidence that he did. He just got paid as if he will. Now we'll see if he will.
One of the things that in talking to my peers, that they used to always give me credit. And they say, Cris, man, you'll do the ugly stuff. You'll do the stuff that people don't like to do. You'll do the training. You'll do the film study. You'll go across the middle. You'll block. You'll do those things. See, Ben Simmons, I don't care what LeBron says, young prince, because if you don't develop a jump shot, you're just a toad, bruh. You're a 6'10" toad. It might look good and everything, but he needs to be able to bring that to the basketball court, that jump shot. He doesn't have a routine. I go to a lot of Sixers games. He don't have no shooting routine like the scorers we do, the Steph Currys, the Kawhi Leonards, guys who score the basketball. Ben does not have a routine, and I know people are talking to him about it. Is he into the lifestyle and the benefits of the lifestyle compared to being an evolved player? And that's the question. What's going to be his attitude moving forward? To me, it don't matter. If he don't develop no jump shot, it ain't going to matter to me. I don't want to be writing this. I just like to see the best develop so that we can see the best out of their athletic ability.
Maybe LeBron sits down and talks to him. Maybe he would respect him. I don't know. I kind of like Baby King. Then I can say it again.
Baby King.
Baby King.
You just made that up.
I know. It was cute. Here with Cris Broussard. So it took one offseason for NBA star power to flood Los Angeles. Anthony Davis joined LeBron in the Lakers. But just down the hall, the Clippers got the reigning Finals MVP Kawhi Leonard to play alongside Paul George. And just like that, the Lakers-Clippers rivalry was renewed. So AD can't help but agree, saying, quote, "It's going to be exciting. Two juggernauts going at it. We'll see who comes out on top." All right, Broussard, which duo will have more success, LeBron and AD or Kawhi and Paul George?
Look, I do think LeBron and AD will win a championship. This is a big statement within the next 2 years. I think they will win one of these titles. But if I go long term, who will have more success? I have to pick the Clippers duo. One, obviously, the age. Those guys, Kawhi's 28, Paul George 29. Obviously, LeBron in his 17th year will turn 35 next season. So that's one thing. But the main thing is the organization. Organizations are a big part in winning championships. Look at the last several championships. Toronto, great front office led by Masai Ujiri. Golden State, great front office. Go back to Miami with LeBron there. Pat Riley, great front office. San Antonio won one in that stretch. We know they have a great front office. Cleveland with David Griffin, who's shown he's done a terrific job in New Orleans. So front offices, coaching staff, all that is important. And when I compare the two, I have a lot more confidence in the Clippers organization and front office to put the right pieces in place. I think they already have them, but if they don't, they'll make the right moves. The Lakers, I mean, let's just face it, the front office is still a mess. And it's kind of like there's a large feeling that LeBron is really the adult in the organization, kind of running it. So I just think there'll be less drama with the Clippers, and the organization is much stronger. So I'd pick those guys.
This is very difficult because you have to look at what window. If you look at the age part, I mean, there is no comparison to the age of the players. Kawhi Leonard, how healthy will he be, moving forward? It seems as if there won't be any questions, but to me, this is very difficult because I believe in institutional talent. And if you look at even going back to how did the Lakers win all those titles? Man, Dr. Buss was amazing. I mean, every first meeting, Dr. Buss was there. And these superstars will tell you, my brother drafted in the second round, not the superstar treatment, but Dr. Buss was great at this now. There's a lot of owners. And God bless her. How you going to feel step into your dad's shoes? With all those championships, the personality he had, how he learned on the job through the years, it's hard. And what you say about the Lakers, it should be a concern. Not only the front office, but what about that bench? What about the head coach?
Well,
What about those assistant coaches that used to be head coaches that might think
had big success too?
Yeah, and might think I might know more than that guy. It will play a role. Now I know, outside of Kawhi not wanting to join LeBron and AD. All right? What the Lakers presented was a problem is trying to win Kawhi and his team over to be in the Lakers. They thought if everything was even, they thought from a medical standpoint, front office, and ownership with Ballmer, because they felt like they're going to run out of breath before he runs out of money, they felt as if the Clippers had a huge advantage over the Lakers.
I want to ask you a question real quick, Broussard, because I think we all, listen, ownership, there's no question it's in the Clippers' favor, and coaching, there's no question it's in the Clippers' favor. By the way, the Clippers front office is as good as anybody in basketball, so it's not necessarily a tale of the tape in that regard. But when you said the Lakers front office is still, let's be fair, a mess, since Magic stepped down, again, set the coaching stuff aside and the ownership stuff aside, the moves they've made, I have to give them enormous credit for. They got the Anthony Davis trade done, which a lot of people thought, man, New Orleans, that deal's not going to get done. And you thought it was a way overpay, not you, but some people did. And then you saw what Paul George went for, and you saw first-round picks aren't necessarily as valuable as they were a few years later. Then we said, man, they're going all in on Kawhi. We understood why. We thought it was a good move. But if they don't, they're going to be scrambling. To miss out on Kawhi.
I did warn you, though. So let's give Rob Pelinka benefit of the doubt.
Right. No, that's what I'm
Maybe
leading to.
Magic Johnson was the problem.
Right. And since then, so they miss out on Kawhi. They get Danny Green, who would have been one of my premier targets to begin it. I'm not as high on Boogie as some people, but for the price, there's no doubt on the upside. You find a way to bring in Avery Bradley. You bring in guys that Jared Dudley, who won't play much but is a good fit. Like your Troy Daniels is a shooter. Don't you think they've done a good job since Magic walked away as far as player acquisition stuff?
No question that after Kawhi went to the Clippers, no question they did a great job. You have to give him an A. But that in and of itself is not going to dismiss a lot of the other stuff that still went on. And like you said, they made good moves, but they still, like, they don't have a GM. You know, Rob Pelinka's the GM. They don't have a president.
Right.
You know, and Kurt Rambis is like a special advisor, but he's got as much power as anybody when it comes to basketball operations. So the way they hired Frank Vogel, you know, the way they only gave Ty Lue a 3-year offer. So those types of things, I will be the first to say they did a great job after Kawhi. However, I still give the Clippers a big advantage.
Well, if you take the two teams and take out the superstars, take out the four of them, because some could argue they're both even. There's so much more stability with regards to the Clippers. The head coach, the organization, the role players, the bench, the way they play basketball, the personalities, the fact that they all know what role they're going to play. It just seems like top to bottom, the Clippers seem like they have so much more stability than the Lakers.
Let's focus, since we've talked about everything except for the players, let's focus on the players part of it. Remove those top four guys, like you said, LeBron and AD, Paul George and Kawhi. Just take them out. I think the better duos with the Lakers. Some people think it's with the Clippers. Who cares? Call it a wash. The rest of the roster, so if we go to Kuzma, to Danny Green, Boogie Cousins, Avery Bradley, your next four, versus it'd be Lou Williams, Patrick Beverley, Trez Harrell, and then I guess Landry Shamet. I don't know who their fourth guy would be. To me, those are pretty comparable. Well, it's not the Clippers know their roles more, but to me, you can't say they are clearly the more talented supporting cast.
In a vacuum, I would say the Lakers had. I mean, obviously they have more star power with Rondo and DeMarcus. Yeah, on paper, I would give their supporting cast the advantage.
Yes.
But with the coaching, with the attitudes,
so you know
knowing your role, that is better.
Yeah.
That is in favor of the Clippers. I don't know what the drama will be with the Lakers. Hopefully there is none.
Oh, there will be some.
But yeah, I mean, and a lot of that's got to be laid at the feet of LeBron. I don't know what was the last season he didn't have some drama. So there may be drama.
St. Mary.
All right. So there's not going to be
drama. There was drama there because he got the Hummer then. Remember?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're right. Junior year, St. Vincent.
Yeah. There's other people, LeBron fans besides you, bro. Been watching.
Right. Yeah. Probably junior high. So that's LeBron. There's not going to be drama with the Clippers. I don't imagine. I mean, I don't see it with these guys, and that is an advantage in their favor.
Well, two advantages. Coming off the bench, you know you got a proven instant offense in Lou Williams.
No
all right?
question.
Now, Kuz, I'm high on Kuz. But if you give me a guy in a Game 7 who I need to be the third scorer, Lou Williams has proven that. Without a shadow of a doubt, he's one of the best that's ever played in this business. We know the continuity, the buy-in. Huge advantage on the defense. They got 3 All-NBA players starting. Patrick Beverley is a beast, and he fits perfect with Kawhi and Paul George, and they have better matchups against LeBron. They got 2 of the better defenders and wing defenders in Kawhi and Paul George going against LeBron. To me right now, the Clippers have the advantages with all this stuff.
I'm glad you mentioned Lou, because I don't think they're the two guys that benefit the most from this summer individually might be Lou Williams and Kyle Kuzma. For those two guys, they will never be double-teamed for the next 2 years. Lou Williams, if you remember in that series against Golden State, what happened in Game 6 was they said, man, anyone but Lou Williams beat us. Now Lou Williams is going to be single-teamed with the team's 3rd or 4th best defender on him. Kuzma will get the same treatment out with the Lakers.
All right, let's talk some Kevin Durant.
That dude just give up. He give up them the best thing like a kiss. Like,
when the Nets acquired Kyrie Irving to play along, excuse me.
Well, I know 3 of them in jail.
Acquired Kyrie Irving. We should just, I don't even know what the question is. When the Nets got Kyrie to play alongside KD this offseason, little details getting in the way, and that is when would KD actually see the court? The 2-time Finals MVP is recovering from an Achilles tear, could sideline him from the entire season. And Nets GM Sean Marks is okay with that, saying, quote, we're certainly not going to rush him back. It's going to be a Kevin Durant decision. So, Broussard, what'd you have for lunch? And also, what's your reaction to all of this?
Yesterday, I had a burger and fries.
Good for you.
Nice setting. Food was okay, but nice setting. But anyway, Look, he said the right things. I mean, obviously you signed him for 4 years. You don't want to put year 2 and maybe even beyond in jeopardy by rushing him back. So obviously that's the right thing to do. Now, I've heard you talk about how you think he could be back next season. There are some people I've talked to in the league who feel the same way, like he could be back next season. They've got a tremendous medical staff. We know it's the doctor who operated on him.
Yes.
So he fully trusts them. If they say he can come back, they will be hard to deal with, even if he gets back late in the season or even in the playoffs. Because when you're 7 feet and can shoot, like Kevin Durant's
he can
game,
ease himself into
yes, it's not like bringing in a ball.
This is not Dominic Wilkins either.
Right. I mean, you know, bringing in
this is not Kobe.
No,
a
not at that
LeBron, a
stage.
Kobe, a Dwayne Wade, a Kyrie, a guy that's ball dominant is harder to fit in. Whereas Kevin Durant, a shooter, 7 feet, can shoot out to 3 anywhere on the court, he will be able to fit in smoothly, and they could be tough if he gets back next season.
And his style, which I do believe, because a lot of my predictions are based on modern-day medicine, what the technology is, and it happens a lot at the beginning, not at the end. Well, what's different now with the Achilles? They don't immobilize it. They don't put you in a cast. They get you up and get you rehabbing so you don't have all that atrophy. You don't lose all that muscle mass. Now, Kevin Durant, you saw his calf. He ain't got no muscle mass to be able to lose there. But the type of shape that he was in when he got hurt, it shall lead to him having a speedy recovery. Now, as far as rush, when you're training an elite athlete, he's pushing it every day. And I believe it's important for your psyche. That's what makes today's rehab on this Wednesday more important than it would be if you don't put a goal. Because if I don't put a goal, what difference does it make how much pain I'm in today? What difference does it make? So I just believe with the training staff, and I thought you brought up one of the critical points because I looked up their training staff, not only the doctor, but they have the most unique training staff, I would say, in all of sports. They have guys that have combat training, they have guys that have rugby training, and they brought all these minds together to figure out what's best to train the type of athletes that we're going to have. So top to bottom, man, the Nets organization, what they present a great opportunity for Kevin Durant to prove to the world that not only was I one of the best basketball players, but I still am in his comeback next season.
So a couple points. One is, to your point, Kevin Durant could average 20 a game without ever jumping more than 4 inches off the ground. Like, he wouldn't be the guy that we saw running roughshod over the Clippers after he said to the world, I'm Kevin Durant, but he would still be an all-star level player without needing almost any athleticism on the offensive end because his ability to shoot and how tall he is and how long his arms are.
There's no system that he doesn't fit into.
Right.
Correct.
Exactly.
And even if it's just spot up, let Kyrie run the show, go spot up. He is, I mean, can he be a super rich man's Ryan Anderson from when that, you know what I mean? Like, of course he could be.
Yes.
So we know when he comes back, even if he's not his old self yet, he is a huge addition. It's not going to be like, man, Gordon Hayward, he's out there and he's hurting us. That's not the situation. And to your point, Chris, I totally expect KD to say, how long Kobe take? 240 days? 239 is my goal. I'm going to try to, because KD's talked about how he's looked up to Kobe. Kobe's one of his favorite guys. Kobe's 240 days is about the quickest recovery we've seen.
One of his buddies from high school.
Yep.
Rudy Gay.
Yeah, and Rudy Gay's recovery was 273 days, about a month longer than Kobe. So 240 days would put him back the first week of February. And then the Nets are really in business. Then you got a couple months to figure things out together, get him into shape, and then go into the postseason.
And Rudy Gay was with one of the most conservative training staffs in San Antonio. They went on record to say Rudy Gay was at least available a month before he played in a game.
And so, with all that said, I agree he should have that target, because if you don't have the target of next season, it's the difference between trying to be back in 8 months after the injury and be back 15 months after the injury. Because if you're not going to, because of when the injury happened, we'd be talking, instead of February of 2020, essentially November of 2020. It's an enormous difference. And the pushing yourself each morning. If you think, man, every single day, it's the difference in that. So I get it. But I also agree with Sean Marks 100%, which is they will treat him as the priceless asset that he is and not rush him. He might try to rush himself. It will be the Nets' job to pull back on the reins rather than what Golden State did, which I think was kind of, you ready? We good? Like, how do you? They're going to go the opposite because they look at, they hope KD's there not just the next 3 years, the next 7 years. And so they will bake that into when they allow him to go play.
I brought this up earlier and you argued it and you made a good point, but I wondered if Kevin Durant would be a little gun shy to get himself back out on the court after rushing himself. A lot of people would say rushing himself back on the court last year. Different injury, different circumstances, and then he got hurt again. I wonder if, and then CC was just saying that as a professional athlete, your goal is to rush yourself back as quickly as possible. Do you see any part of him that would be concerned? He's got more time now. He signed a longer-term deal. He is a Net for a while. Would even want to come back next year?
Well, I think, one, he's got the full trust in this training staff. So if they say he's ready, I think he'll be ready. If you were right, Nick, and he gets back, early February, they would probably wait until after the All-Star break.
Yep.
So then it's late February. That gives you a few more weeks. You know this, Chris, whenever he comes back, even if he waits till the following season, there's going to be doubt. That's just something an athlete has to fight through.
First time you see him live bullets.
Yeah, no. When you have an injury, you have to fight through that no matter what the situation. So that'll be there. But if he can come back late February, there's going to be rust. As great as he is, there will be rust. That's what he'll work through. If he could be ready, Kevin Durant by the playoffs,
But no matter when he comes back, Jenna, they will go through the full process, which they did in Golden State.
They did
this
not
practice, that practice, this game, you're in time management. Golden State, he didn't go through a full practice and then no minutes restrictions.
Right.
It was ridiculous.
The day after, see how he looks. No, there was none of that.
Thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Remember, leave us a review and tell us what you think. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts and catch us on FS1 Monday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. Eastern. For Cris Carter and Nick Wright, I'm Jenna Wolfe. So long, everybody.